So I'm going to talk to you about our project, which is Spexi and LayerDrone. Some of you might know us as Spexi, the drone guys, the guys who automate drones for data. And recently, at the last DePIN Day in Dubai, we actually announced the creation of the LayerDrone Foundation and network, which is going to steward all of the data that is being captured by these pilots and make it available to others that might want to build on it, like Spexi. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Spexi and LayerDrone and what we do, and then I'm going to talk about how we have decided to start transitioning the Web 2 business that we've been building for quite some time to Web 3. And the little animation in the background is actually really helpful to visualize what it is we do. We fully automate drones at crazy scales to capture imagery that's much higher resolution than what's available from satellites or planes. So most people don't realize how big the geospatial data marketing is, but it underpins so much of what the economy runs on. We can start at the more obvious and exciting ones like spatial AI and some of these exciting applications coming out recently, but all the way down to advertising. Google actually uses a lot of Earth imagery underpinning their advertising engines, autonomous systems, smart cities, AR, VR, you name it. So today's aerial data is actually not that good. This is an example of the best data that you can buy commercially from satellite providers. When you zoom in to a train track, for example, the data becomes almost unusable. It's not sufficient for next generation applications, and all of these companies are looking for better data products, higher resolution data products. This is stuff that we can provide that they're asking for. So drones do produce better data, but drones have been around for a long time. So why hasn't this been a solution before? There's lots of good imagery, high resolution, they fly all over the place. But why haven't they been producing data for these big companies yet? And the reason is because no one has standardized or coordinated the inputs. That's what we do. We use the Uber H3 grid, resolution 9 hexagons, we call them spexagons, they're about 25 acres in size, and within each one is a flight plan. Drone pilots simply have to download our mobile application, connects to their off-the-shelf DJI drone, they get close to one of these hexes, and the drone automatically flies within a very standardized flight plan to produce predictable outputs, which gets a lot of these customers excited, and most of those names we're either in POCs with or negotiations with. So this is the difference in numbers that Tom was talking about. We're a little bit more bullish on how good this data is when you actually break down the realities of how you capture this data using 25-acre parcels, which is the minimum buy that customers can do within which, with satellites, the minimum buy is much larger. You get a much more compelling data product. So, like I said, step one is we overlay areas that need to be flown with these hexagons, and it gets repeated into the pilot's mobile app. The drone pilots open up the app, connect their drone, simply hit the fly button. The drone ascends to about 80 meters above ground, and it follows terrain as it images the hex by hex by hex. The data that's produced is much, much better than what's available at scale. So we have mostly built the network so far in North America. We're doing some testing in Europe and in Mexico, but we're trying to keep supply as constrained as we can in North America to build up the demand side and the network effects. But we've had some pretty crazy traction in North America already. So 4.7 million acres have been imaged using this hexagon system. Over 150,000 flights, separate flights in the last year alone, which is about 25,000 hours of straight time of drones in the air. This is a vast drone network that really hasn't been done before at this scale. And the demand side, in our testnet, we've had some decent traction on revenue as well. So as we've been building up towards this, the testnet really only launched in 2024, and 7 figures of revenue we've been able to get going here before there's a token. So some of the cool things you can do with this data is create high-resolution, ultra-realistic digital twins, and when you combine that with some of the applications that these customers are doing, you get really interesting things. And so Pokemon Go and Niantic is a really good example. They're building the next generation of large geospatial models, and we're really excited to be working with them in some of this. So how do we think about this? I just talked a lot about the business, the Web 2 business, which is creating geospatial data for customers. Where's the token? Where's the Web 3 angle? And there's 4 things that we think about. Start with a real business. Figure out how to transition your community thoughtfully decentralize, And this is something that was talked about in the last chat, but thoughtfully decentralizing is really important. And then play both games. And when I say both games, I mean the Web 2 game and the Web 3 game. So start with the real business. Does your business solve real problems? Does it have customers that want to pay for what you're doing? This is the step one in a DePIN. Token speculation can sometimes replace revenue, and that's not what we're looking for in DePIN. We want to see real revenue coming from real customers. We want to see product market fit, and we want to see unit economics that can work at least at minimal scales without token subsidies to get things going. So a good example of this was Render. They had a business in 2009 as GPU and started building out relationships and decided to pivot into Web3, which was very successful for them, and they did this over a good amount of time. For us, we were actually founded in 2018, and we started building software to automate drones back then. We had different use cases, different revenue streams, but we really decided that the Web3 angle was for us in 2022 when we started raising for it, and we started figuring out how to transition these guys. So we want to transition your community in a way that doesn't just bring them towards the token, but brings them towards rewards that match the value created. Contributors, ideally, if you can, get value before the existence of tokens. So in our network, we actually pay cash for pilots to contribute for each of those hexes. They also get points, which bring them over to the token side once ready, but getting value into contributors' hands before the existence of a token enables you to really see behavior in those contributors that aligns better with the network instead of their want or need for a token. The community also can understand your product and your mission better if you start incentivizing pre-token with something that they can use, because tokens can be distracting for contributors. So Farcaster was a good example of this. They launched in 2020 as an invite-only waitlist-based network. They removed the waitlist to go permissionless, introduced frames, and encouraged multiple clients to join the community in just one app. For us, the drone pilots use the Spexi app to fly, and they earn points and cash for rewards. And as I said previously, we spun out and announced the LayerDrone Foundation, which will steward the Web3 side of the network, and the token, which the pilots are starting to migrate to via our points campaign. So decentralization. This is one of the things that I think for DePINs can go a bunch of different ways. For us, we think about it in terms of what do we need to do to make sure that this network can flourish over the next 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, and 10 years or more. And that means trying not to decentralize too much too early, because us, the founders of the network, the builders, we need to retain some level of control and some level of flexibility to pivot with our customers in the network as it grows. So transferring governance when the community can handle complexity, I think, is an important one that it's hard to time that right. But for us, we think that giving the community more and more governance over time is the right approach, but not so much in the early days. And certain things like quality control or safety, and in our network, this is an aviation network. Drone pilots are flying at crazy scales using our software. If they want to go fly too close to an airport or a military zone, that's not something that the community should be able to do just because they want to. Rules are there for a reason in aviation. So a good example of this was Uniswap, launched as a centralized protocol, simple automated market maker. After proving the mechanism, a governance token was introduced 2 years later, and they still maintain the labs team for a lot of the critical development. And for us, we have spun out the LayerDrone Foundation to start implementing some of these governance structures and the decentralization, steward the token, steward the open data network. But Spexi, as the founding core contributor in LabsCo, is still maintaining a fair amount of development control as the network starts to grow. So last but not least, running a real business and launching tokens are two entirely different things. Running a business requires you to talk to your customers, get product market fit, pivot with them, generate revenue, have B2B relationships, go do B2B sales. Launching a token requires you to have that authenticity, but there is market makers, there is liquidity, there's exchanges, there's which exchanges are going to go on, how are you going to do that, what are the things that you're going to do to make your token successful. The business is going to play a big part of that in the future, but not necessarily right away. And so for us, the token and the exchange strategy, the market making strategy, how much of your token supply are you going to allocate to those to make sure that you're in the right places where the volume is, where the price is, that's an important thing. And it's something not to be overlooked, and it's a big part of the game. So for us, we have allocated quite a bit of our supply to make sure that we're available for those exchanges and those market makers should we want to go with them. The contributors will receive rewards and part of the distribution event, but for the most part, we just really think about how do you make sure that your token is in the places where the volume is, and back that by the story of your business and the fundamentals, of course, that you're going to prove by building a great business on top. So start with the real business, transition your community, thoughtfully decentralize, and play both games. So for us, that means creating the LayerDrone Foundation, transitioning the community over to that thoughtfully using points, making sure that decentralization isn't too fast, too quick for our network especially, retaining control, and then lastly, play both games with the token. And so we're excited to announce that the LayerDrone Foundation and network will be moving to mainnet this year. Can't say exactly when, but we know it's going to be this year. It's been a long time coming for us. We've been building since 2022 to get to this point. And so keep your eyes out for that announcement. And thanks so much. Thanks for having us.